This 4-year-old beggar girl gets burned with a hot knife, but a millionaire appears behind the aggressor and does something that shocks everyone. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The scorching August sun beat down on the streets of Harmony Creek, Ohio. In the town square, where pigeons squabbled over crumbs and retirees sought shade under the old oak trees, a small figure drew attention with her determined gestures. Iris, just 6 years old, held out her small, dirty hand to passers-by, her voice barely audible as she asked for a dime to buy food. Her brown hair clung to her sweaty face, and the faded pink dress she wore was too small for her thin little body. Even so, there was something in her dark eyes that impressed those who looked closely, a flame of hope that never seemed to go out, no matter how many people walked past her without even a glance. Across the square, sitting on a makeshift plastic chair, Valdate watched her daughter's every move with a heavy heart. At 28, the woman's face bore the marks of someone who had aged before their time. Her right leg, injured months ago in an accident at the local canning factory, a Del Monte plant, ached constantly, reminding her every day of how drastically her life had changed. Valdate still remembered the days when she woke up at 5 in the morning to work at the plant. She was an exemplary employee, never absent, always punctual. But everything changed on that fateful day when a faulty machine caused the accident that left her struggling to walk. Without work and without resources, she and Iris ended up on the streets. The afternoon was especially hot when Ron Miller appeared in the square. At 45, the owner of the local auto repair shop was known for his explosive temper, especially when he was drinking. That day, after a few beers at the corner bar, he was walking unsteadily when he saw Iris begging near the bench where he usually sat to read the newspaper. "What in the hell is this?" he shouted, drawing everyone's attention. "A dirty kid begging for money right here in the center of town. This is outrageous." Iris cowered, but didn't move. Her eyes met Valdate's, who tried to get up from her chair, but the pain in her leg prevented her from moving quickly. Ron approached the girl, his heavy breath reeking of alcohol. "Aren't you ashamed of bothering decent people like this?" he continued, taking a lighter from his pocket. "Someone needs to teach you a lesson." What happened next shocked everyone present. Ron flicked the lighter and heated the blade of a small pocket knife he carried. Before anyone could react, he grabbed Iris's fragile arm and pressed the hot metal to her skin. The girl's scream echoed throughout the square. It was a sound that pierced the soul, mixing physical pain with an absolute incomprehension of why this was happening to her. Valdate tried to get up desperately, screaming her daughter's name, but her injured leg wouldn't let her run. It was at that moment that Eugene Caldwell appeared. The 52-year-old businessman was walking calmly through the square when he saw the scene. Without hesitating for a second, he ran towards Ron and pushed him with such force that the man fell to the ground, losing his balance. "Are you completely insane?" Eugene shouted, picking up Iris. The girl was crying convulsively, holding her burned arm against her chest. "How could you do such a thing to a child?" Eugene was an imposing man, owner of several corn farms in the region. Despite his wealth, he had never lost compassion for the less fortunate. At that moment, seeing Iris's suffering, something deep stirred in his heart. "We're going to the hospital now," he said, still holding the girl in his arms. Valdate finally managed to get up and followed them, limping and crying, while Ron remained lying on the ground, being watched by curious onlookers who were beginning to gather. During the drive to the county hospital, Eugene felt Iris's little body trembling with pain and fear. She had stopped crying, but her eyes were glazed over, as if she were in shock. He held her close to his chest, promising softly that everything would be all right. At the hospital, Eugene not only paid all the treatment costs, but also stayed by Iris's side throughout the procedure. The doctors cleaned and treated the burn, explaining that it would leave a scar, but that with proper care, there would be no major complications. While the nurses were dressing the wound, Eugene watched Iris with admiration. Despite the pain, the girl wasn't crying anymore. She just looked at him with those dark, deep eyes, as if she were trying to understand why a stranger was taking care of her with so much kindness. "What's your name, little one?" he asked softly. "Iris," she replied with a weak but firm voice. "Iris is a beautiful name. You're very brave, you know." The girl just nodded, but for the first time in a long time, a small smile appeared on her lips. Valdate, who was watching everything from afar, felt a mixture of gratitude and confusion. Why was this elegant and clearly wealthy man being so kind to them? When they left the hospital, Eugene insisted on taking them home. It was then that he discovered that mother and daughter didn't have their own home, sleeping in temporary shelters or at the homes of acquaintances when they could. Their reality deeply impacted him. That night, lying in his comfortable bed, Eugene couldn't stop thinking about Iris. There was something about that girl that moved him in a way he couldn't explain. Perhaps it was her strength in the face of suffering, or the way her eyes sparkled even in the midst of adversity. But what he didn't know yet was that this inexplicable connection with Iris was about to turn his life upside down, bringing consequences that neither he nor anyone around him could imagine. In the days following the incident in the square, Eugene found himself in a routine he never imagined having. Every morning, after checking on the corn farm business, he stopped by the hospital to check on Iris's wound dressings. The girl always waited for him with a shy smile, and little by little she began to trust the man who had appeared as a protective angel in her life. Uncle Gene, she called him affectionately, a shortened version of the name Eugene that made him smile every time. It was impressive how a child who had suffered so much managed to maintain such natural sweetness. During these visits, Eugene began to bring small gifts: dolls, children's books, chocolates, and fresh fruit. Valdate was visibly uncomfortable, with so much generosity, always trying to refuse the gifts, but Iris received them with a pure joy that melted any resistance. It was during one of these conversations at the hospital that Eugene discovered details about Valdate's past. She had worked at the Del Monte canning factory, where he had shares as a minority shareholder. The accident that disabled her happened due to pure negligence. The responsible supervisor had not provided adequate safety equipment, citing cost-cutting. "I was a good employee," Valdate said with tears in her eyes. "I worked at the factory for 5 years, never missed a day. But after the accident, they fired me, saying I was no longer fit for heavy work." The guilt that Eugene felt was like a punch to the stomach. Indirectly, he was part of the system that had destroyed the life of that family. Even though he wasn't directly responsible for the factory's operational decisions, he knew he could have demanded better working conditions for the employees. "This isn't going to stay like this," he promised. "You deserve a dignified life." 2 weeks after the incident, Eugene made a proposal that left Valdate in shock. He offered a simple but comfortable house in the Lapa neighborhood for her and Iris to live in. In addition, he committed to paying for all the physical therapy necessary for Valdate to fully recover. "I can't accept this," Valdate said, trembling. "It's too much generosity. You don't even know us well." "I know enough," replied Eugene, looking at Iris, who was playing with a new doll in the corner of the room. "You need help, and I can help. It's that simple." But nothing was simple in the life of Eugene Caldwell. At home, his wife Marcia watched her husband's every move with growing suspicion. At 48, she had always been a jealous woman, but had never had real reason to doubt Eugene's fidelity. Now, seeing him leave every day to visit that girl and her mother, as she referred to Iris, and Valdate, she felt a discomfort she couldn't explain. "You're spending too much time with this story," she commented during dinner, nervously fiddling with her pearl necklace. "People are already talking." "What people?" Eugene asked, without looking up from his plate. "The wives of your partners. The friends at the club. Everyone thinks it's strange, your obsession with an unknown child. It's not obsession, it's compassion, something that should be more common among people like us." The tension between the couple increased when Marcia discovered through bank statements that Eugene was spending significant amounts of money on Iris's family. It wasn't just medical costs and the house. There were purchases of clothes, food, and books, toys, and even new furniture. It was then that Marcia made a decision that would change everything. She hired Saul Myers, a 35-year-old private investigator known for his discretion and efficiency. Saul was a thin, bespectacled man who went unnoticed in any crowd. Perfect characteristics for his job. "I want to know everything about this woman and this child," Marcia instructed during the meeting in Saul's office. "And especially, I want to understand why my husband is so involved with them." Meanwhile, the relationship between Eugene and Iris deepened in a natural and touching way. The girl, who had learned to distrust adults due to the difficulties she had faced in life, found in Eugene a figure of protection and affection that she had never known. He wasn't just generous with gifts. He was patient, listened to her childish stories with genuine attention, and answered her questions with seriousness. What impressed Eugene the most was Iris's exceptional intelligence. At 6 years old, she was already showing a learning ability well above average. With the books he gave her, the girl learned to read on her own in a matter of weeks, devouring children's stories and asking complex questions about the plots. "Why didn't Cinderella leave home sooner?" she asked one afternoon, while flipping through an illustrated book. "If she knew the stepmother was evil, why did she suffer so long?" Questions like this made Eugene reflect on Iris's own situation. Like the character in the story, the girl had been forced to accept a difficult reality, but unlike Cinderella, she didn't wait for magic to change her life. She found strength within herself. Mathematics was also a natural talent of Iris. Eugene discovered this when she began to mentally calculate how much money they would need to buy different items at the market, always worried about not spending too much of Uncle Gene's money, as she said. Valdate, in turn, lived in a constant internal conflict. She was immensely grateful for Eugene's generosity, who had literally saved their lives, but she also felt that she was losing control over her own existence. All important decisions now depended on him: where to live, which doctor to consult, which school Iris would attend. Even more disturbing was realizing that Iris was emotionally distancing herself from her. The girl, who had always been very attached to her mother, now spent hours talking about Uncle Gene and his visits, as if he were the most important person in her life. "Mom, Uncle Gene said that when I grow up, I can study at a university," Iris said with her eyes shining. "He said that smart people like me can be anything they want." Valdate forced a smile, but inside she felt a twinge of jealousy mixed with fear. What if Eugene got tired of helping them? What if all that generosity had a price that she couldn't yet see? The situation became even more complicated when Ron Miller, after spending only 3 days in jail for assault, began to spread malicious rumors around town. Still outraged at having been publicly humiliated by Eugene, he took every opportunity to plant doubts about the businessman's true intentions. "Rich man doesn't do anything for free," he muttered at the bar, for anyone who would listen. "Must have some ulterior motive with that kid. It's all very suspicious." The rumors started small, but like all gossip in small towns, they took on a life of their own and spread quickly. Soon, even people who knew and respected Eugene began to question his motives, creating a climate of distrust that made each public appearance with Iris a moment of embarrassment. What no one knew yet was that Saul, the detective hired by Marcia, had already discovered information that would explain everything, and that these revelations were about to explode like a bomb in the lives of everyone involved. Saul Myers was meticulous in his work. For 2 weeks, he discreetly followed Eugene's steps, photographed his meetings with Iris and Valdete, and thoroughly investigated the businessman's past. What he discovered would forever change the Caldwell family dynamic. On a rainy January afternoon, Saul knocked on the door of the Caldwell mansion carrying a brown folder full of documents and photographs. Marcia received him in the office, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the folder containing the answers to her suspicions. "Mrs. Caldwell," Saul began in his calm and professional voice, "I found some very important information about your husband. He had a daughter who passed away 15 years ago. Marcia felt the world spin around her. "What do you mean?" "What daughter? Eugene never told me about this." "It was from a relationship prior to his marriage with you. The girl's name was Sophia. She died at the age of 7, a victim of leukemia. According to the medical records I was able to obtain, your husband spent a fortune trying to save her, but he couldn't." The photographs scattered on the table showed a younger Eugene entering and leaving hospitals, always carrying a girl with brown hair and dark eyes who bore a striking resemblance to Iris. Marcia felt nausea rising in her stomach. "There's more, Mrs. Caldwell," Saul continued. "After his daughter's death, your husband fell into a deep depression. He was hospitalized for 2 months in a psychiatric clinic. And since then, according to the people I interviewed, he's never been the same." Marcia vaguely remembered Eugene mentioning that he had lost someone important in the past, but he always brushed it off when she tried to find out more. Now she understood why he systematically refused to have children with her, always claiming it wasn't the right time. The physical resemblance between his deceased daughter and the current girl is remarkable, Saul observed, showing side-by-side photos. Same approximate age, same physique, same expression in the eyes. It's as if he's trying to replace his dead daughter, Marcia completed, her voice coming out as a whisper filled with pain and anger. That same night, when Eugene arrived home after another visit to Iris, he found Marcia waiting in the living room with the photographs scattered on the coffee table. The silence between them was deafening. "So, is that it?" Marcia asked without looking at her husband. "You're trying to replace Sophia with this girl?" Eugene stopped in the middle of the room, the blood draining from his face. For 15 years he had kept that secret, that pain that he never managed to overcome completely. "It's not what you're thinking," he said, his voice weak. "Then explain." "It to me," Marcia exploded, finally facing him. "Explain to me why you hid from me that you had a daughter. Explain to me why you never wanted to have children with me. Explain to me why you're spending a fortune on a strange child." "Because I feel alive again," Eugene shouted, releasing 15 years of repressed pain. "Because since Sophia died, I've only existed. I work, I eat, I sleep, but I don't live. And when I saw Iris suffering in that square, when I saw that strength, that light in her eyes even after everything she had been through, I felt something I hadn't felt in years." Marcia began to cry, but it was a cry of anger, not of sadness. "And me? What am I to you? Just company while you didn't find your replacement for Sophia? You know that's not it." "Do I? Do I really? Then why did you never tell me about her? Why did you deny me the chance to be a mother all these years?" The argument stretched into the early hours of the morning. Marcia demanded that Eugene immediately stop helping Iris and Valdete, threatening to file for divorce if he continued. Eugene, in turn, flatly refused to abandon the girl. "I'm not going to do to Iris what life did to Sophia," he declared firmly. I'm not going to let her suffer if I can avoid it. Then choose, said Marcia, drying her tears. Either you stop this unhealthy obsession, or our marriage ends here. Meanwhile, in the small house in the Lapa neighborhood, Iris woke up in the middle of the night with nightmares. She had dreamed that Uncle Jean was leaving and never coming back, leaving her alone again on the streets. Valdate comforted her, but she was also worried about recent events. The rumors spread by Ron had reached Valdate's ears through well-intentioned neighbors. Nasty comments about Eugene's visits, speculations about his true motives, suspicious looks when she walked down the street with Iris. "Mom, why do people keep looking at us strangely?" Iris asked during breakfast. "Don't worry about it, honey. Some people just can't understand kindness." But Valdete knew the situation was becoming unsustainable. The social pressure was growing, and she feared that all of Eugene's generosity could turn against them. The situation worsened when Father Michael, the 60-year-old pastor of St. Benedict's Church, approached Eugene in his office. The priest was a respected figure in the town, known for his wisdom and discretion. "My son," he said in his deliberate voice, "I come here as a friend, not as a judge. There are comments circulating around town about your closeness with the family of the burned girl." Eugene sighed deeply. "Father, do you really believe that I would have bad intentions with a child?" "I don't believe it, Eugene. I've known you for years. I know your character. But it's not my opinions that matter now. It's the comments of others, which could tarnish your reputation and, worse, harm the child herself." The priest suggested that Eugene temporarily step away from the situation for the good of everyone involved. But Eugene flatly refused. "Father, with all due respect, I'm not going to abandon Iris. She has already been abandoned by society, by the system, by fate itself. I'm not going to be another adult who fails her. And your wife? I heard there are problems at home. Marcia will have to understand, or not. But I'm not going to give up doing what's right because of gossip." Meanwhile, Valdete made a decision that she believed was best for everyone. She would leave Harmony Creek with Iris. She couldn't stand being the center of negative attention any longer. She couldn't stand depending on Eugene's charity any longer, no matter how well-intentioned it was. On a Friday night, she began to pack discreetly, planning to leave on the weekend when Eugene wouldn't show up for his usual visits. But Iris, with her sharp intelligence, noticed something different in her mother's behavior. "Mom, are we going on a trip?" she asked, seeing the clothes being folded into an old suitcase. "Yes, honey, we're going to see new places." "And Uncle Jean, is he coming with us?" Valdate felt her heart break as she saw the anticipation in her daughter's eyes. "No, dear. He has his life here. But you're going to like the new places, you'll see." Iris was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. Then, with a determination that surprised Valdate, she declared, "I don't want to go without Uncle Jean. He promised he would teach me to read harder books. Iris, sometimes we have to leave even when we don't want to." But the girl, for the first time in her life, decided that she wouldn't passively accept a decision she didn't understand. That night, when Valdate fell asleep exhausted from the travel preparations, Iris silently left the house and ran into the dark streets of Harmony Creek, determined to find Uncle Jean and prevent her new life from collapsing again. The early morning was cold when Valdate woke up and discovered that Iris wasn't in bed. Panic took over her body as she searched the whole house, calling her daughter's name. The windows were open, and she realized that the girl had run away during the night. "Iris! Iris!" she shouted in the street, limping with difficulty as she knocked on doors, waking up neighbors. No one had seen the girl pass by. Meanwhile, Iris walked through the deserted streets of Harmony Creek, her little feet aching on the cold asphalt. She didn't know exactly where Eugene lived, but she remembered him mentioning that his house was near the main church. At 6 years old, her Sense of direction was limited, but her determination was unwavering. After 2 hours of walking, lost and hungry, Iris saw the towers of St. Benedict's Church in the distance. She remembered that Eugene had said that he sometimes stopped there to talk to the priest. Maybe he was there now, or maybe someone knew where to find him. When she arrived at the church, the doors were still closed. Iris sat on the stone steps and waited, shivering with cold and exhaustion. That's how Father Michael found her at 6 in the morning, when he arrived for the first Mass of the day. "Little girl, what are you doing here alone at this hour?" asked the priest, concerned. "Looking for Uncle Gene," Iris replied in a weak voice. "My mum wants to leave, but I don't want to leave him." Father Michael immediately recognized the child that the whole town was talking about. His heart ached as he saw the girl's condition: dirty clothes, sore feet, eyes red from crying so much. "Come on, let's go inside the church. You need water and food," he said, carrying Iris in his arms. Meanwhile, Valdete had sought help and called Eugene from a payphone. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Eugene, it's Valdete. Iris has disappeared. She ran away during the night." Eugene felt as if the world had stopped. "What do you mean, disappeared? What happened?" I was packing. We were going to leave. She didn't want to leave and she ran away." "You were leaving without telling me." Eugene's voice carried a mixture of hurt and despair. "Why?" "Because it's all very difficult here. The comments, people looking. I can't take being the center of attention anymore." Eugene dressed quickly and left the house, ignoring the protests of Marcia, who had been awake since the argument the night before. He drove around town looking for Iris, his heart pounding erratically with each passing minute, without finding her. It was the phone call from Father Michael that finally brought relief. "Eugene, the girl is here at the church. She's fine, but very shaken." When Eugene arrived at the church and saw Iris sitting on a bench, drinking hot milk that the priest had prepared, he felt his legs weaken. The girl ran into his arms as soon as she saw him. "Uncle Gene, I knew you would come get me," she said, hugging him tightly. "My little one, you gave me the biggest scare of my life. Why did you run away?" "Because my mom wants to leave, and I don't want to leave you. You're my family too." Father Michael watched the scene in silence. During the hours he spent with Iris, talking and trying to calm her down, he realized that the girl's love for Eugene was genuine and pure. There was nothing inappropriate there. It was simply a child who had found a father figure and didn't want to lose him. When Valdete arrived at the church, brought by a neighbor who had offered a ride, the scene she found made her understand the depth of the situation. Iris was in Eugene's lap, the two of them talking softly, and there was a peace on the girl's face that she hadn't seen in a long time. "Forgive me," said Valdete, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was doing what was best for her, but—" "You were protecting your daughter," Eugene interrupted. "I understand, but running away from home isn't the solution either." Father Michael approached the three of them. "Can I give my opinion on this whole situation?" Everyone nodded in silence. "I've spent these hours observing this child, listening to her words, seeing her gestures, and I can say with certainty that the love between you is true and pure. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong are the malicious minds that can't see kindness when they see it." The priest paused, looking directly at Eugene. "I've known you for years, Eugene. I know your pain, your losses, and I can see that this girl has brought light back to your eyes. Don't let the gossip destroy something so beautiful." "But Father, what about the comments? What about my reputation?" asked Valdete. "My daughter. The people who truly know your character won't listen to the gossip. And as for the others, their opinions shouldn't matter when it comes to a child's happiness." Father Michael made a decision that surprised everyone. Starting on Sunday, I'm going to talk in Mass about Christian charity, about how judging without knowing is a sin. I'm going to make it clear to the whole community that I support Eugene's attitude. In the following days, the situation began to stabilize. Father Michael kept his promise and during the Sunday sermon spoke about the importance of helping others without judging their motivations. His word carried weight in the community, and many of the malicious comments began to cease. But at home, Eugene's situation was far from improving. Marcia had spent the entire weekend packing, preparing to leave her husband. The discovery about Sophia and his refusal to abandon Iris had broken something inside her that seemed irreparable. "You made your choice," she said on a Monday morning, her luggage already at the door. "You chose a child who isn't your daughter instead of the woman who is your wife." "Oh, Marcia, please, it doesn't have to be like this. We can talk, find a solution." The solution was simple: stop this obsession. But you can't, can you? Because she reminds you of your dead daughter. The word dead hit Eugene like a stab in the back. Don't talk about Sophia like that. Sophia has been dead for 15 years, Eugene, and you need to accept that. You can't replace her with this girl. I'm not replacing anything. I'm simply helping a child who needs it. Liar. You're trying to save Iris because you couldn't save Sophia. You're trying to be the father you didn't have time to be. The silence that followed was heavy and painful. Marcia picked up her bags and headed to the door. "I'm going to my sister's house in Charleston. When you get tired of this fantasy and want to come back to reality, look for me. But until then, we have nothing more to talk about." Eugene was left alone in the house that was once full of laughter and plans for the future. For the first time in 15 years, he wondered if Marcia was right. Was he really trying to replace Sophia with Iris? But when he remembered the girl's smile, the way she called him Uncle Gene, the strength she showed even after everything she'd been through, Eugene was sure of one thing: he couldn't abandon her, even if it cost him his marriage. What he didn't know was that Marcia, before leaving for Charleston, had paid an unexpected visit to Valdete, a visit that would completely change the course of the whole story. On Tuesday afternoon, while Iris was playing in the yard with the dolls that Eugene had given her, Valdete heard a firm knock on the door. When she opened it, she found Marcia Caldwell standing on the threshold, elegant even in her pain, carrying an expensive purse and a thick envelope. "Can I come in? We need to talk," said Marcia, her voice controlled but tense. Valdete hesitated for a moment but ushered her in. The two women sat in the small living room, a stark contrast between different worlds. Marcia with her expensive clothes and discreet jewelry, Valdete with her simple dress and hands calloused from work. "I came here to make a proposal," Marcia began, placing the envelope on the coffee table. "Inside this envelope, there's $50,000. It's enough money for you and your daughter to start a new life anywhere you want." Valdate's eyes widened. It was more money than she could earn in years of work. "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "Because I want my husband back," Marcia replied with brutal honesty. "And as long as you're here, that will never happen. But you know there's nothing wrong between me and your husband. He's just helping." "I know there's nothing romantic between you," Marcia interrupted. "That's not what worries me. The problem is that my husband is obsessed with your daughter. He sees in her a second chance to be a father, a way to correct the past." Valdete got up from her chair, pacing nervously around the room. "You're asking me to abandon the only person who cares about my daughter's future. I'm offering you total independence. With this money you can give Iris everything. My husband is giving now, but without depending on anyone. You can choose where to live, what school she will attend, what kind of life you will have." The argument hit Valdete hard. For weeks she had felt uncomfortable with the growing dependence on Eugene. She knew that despite all his generosity, she was creating an unsustainable situation for everyone. "What if I don't accept?" Valdate asked. "Then you will forever be trapped in this situation. My husband will never be able to have a normal life while he feels responsible for Iris, and you will never have true independence." Marcia got up, smoothing her skirt. "Think carefully, Valdete. This money can give Iris a bright future, away from the rumors, away from the problems. You can be truly free." After Marcia left, Valdete was staring at the envelope on the table. $50,000. It was financial freedom. It was the chance to give Iris a decent life, without depending on anyone's charity. But it also meant leaving behind the only person who had shown genuine interest in her daughter's well-being. That night, Valdate barely slept. Iris, noticing her mother's agitation, asked several times if everything was all right. Valdate forced smiles and said she was just tired, but inside she was waging a devastating emotional battle. During the following days, Valdate carefully observed the interaction between Eugene and Iris. It was impossible to deny that there was a special connection between them. The girl had blossomed since he appeared in their lives. She was more confident, happier, demonstrating an intelligence that impressed everyone. Eugene, in turn, seemed to rejuvenate in Iris's presence. His eyes sparkled when he taught her to read more complex books, when he answered her curious questions, when he listened to her tell invented stories with her fertile imagination. But Valdate also noticed signs that the situation was taking its toll. Eugene sometimes arrived with dark circles under his eyes, clearly suffering from the problems at home. Once, she saw him looking sadly at his wedding ring, as if he was saying goodbye to a part of his life. It was on a Thursday, after a particularly melancholic visit from Eugene, that Valdate made her decision. Iris had realized that Uncle Gene was sad and spent the whole afternoon making drawings to cheer him up. When he left, she asked her mother, "Why is Uncle Gene always sad lately?" That night, after Iris fell asleep, Valdate opened the envelope and counted the money. $50,000 in $100 bills. It was real. It was true. It was the chance for change that might never come again. Valdate spent the early hours of the morning writing a letter to Eugene. She scribbled and redid several versions, trying to find words that would explain her decision without hurting him even more. "Eugene, you saved our lives in a way that I will never be able to repay. But I realize that our presence is destroying your family and causing suffering for everyone. Therefore, we have decided to start over somewhere else. Iris will always remember you as an angel who appeared when we needed it most. I hope that one day you can forgive me for this decision. Thank you for everything. Valdate." On Friday morning, very early, Valdate gently woke Iris. "We're going on a trip, honey. Remember we talked about seeing new places?" Iris, still sleepy, let herself be dressed without much resistance. Valdate had packed only the essentials, leaving behind even some of the gifts that Eugene had given so as not to arouse suspicion in the girl. "And Uncle Gene, isn't he going to say goodbye to us?" Iris asked when they were already on the Greyhound bus, heading to Richmond. "He's traveling too, dear, but he said he hopes we'll be very happy." Iris accepted the explanation, but throughout the trip she kept her face glued to the window, as if she expected to see Eugene appear at any moment. When Eugene arrived for his usual visit and found the house empty, with only the letter on the table, he felt as if the world had collapsed on him. He read and reread Valdate's words, trying to understand how everything had crumbled so quickly. "Iris, Valdate!" he shouted through the empty house, as if they would magically appear, but he only found the echo of his own desperate voice. He ran to the bus station, questioned employees, showed photos, but no one had seen mother and daughter. It was as if they had simply evaporated from the town. During the following weeks, Eugene turned into a shadow of himself. He hired private investigators, placed ads in newspapers, made calls to bus stations in neighboring cities. His business began to suffer because he couldn't focus on anything other than the search for Iris and Valdate. Father Michael tried to console him. "Maybe they're right, my son. Maybe it's better this way." "No," Eugene replied vehemently. "Iris called me family. Family doesn't abandon family." But the months passed without any leads. Eugene developed a deep depression, lost weight drastically, and began to completely neglect his appearance and health. His partners in the company became concerned about his mental state. In Richmond, the situation was no better. Iris, now 7 years old, couldn't adapt to the new city. She cried every night asking for Uncle Gene, refused to eat properly, and lost interest in the books she once loved so much. Valdate tried everything to cheer her daughter up. She bought new toys with Marcia's money, enrolled her in a private school, rented a comfortable apartment. But nothing dispelled the deep melancholy that had taken over Iris. "Mom, when are we going back home?" Iris asked constantly. "This is our home now, honey." "No, Mom. Home is where Uncle Gene is." Guilt consumed Valdate. She had accepted the money, believing that she was doing what was best for her daughter, but she saw that Iris was withering away every day. The girl developed symptoms that worried her deeply: constant nightmares, refusal to eat, social isolation. After a whole year away from Harmony Creek, Valdate finally admitted to herself that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The money was running out, Iris was visibly depressed, and she herself felt a constant longing for the simplicity of her previous life. It was then that she made the most difficult decision of her life: to return and face the consequences of her choice. The Greyhound bus that brought Valdate and Iris back to Harmony Creek arrived on a sunny March morning. Iris, now 8 years old, was visibly thinner and paler, but her eyes sparkled for the first time in months when she recognized the familiar landscape through the window. "Mom, are we really going back home?" she asked, her voice filled with cautious hope. "Yes, honey. We're going back home." Valdate carried only 2 small suitcases. Marcia's money had run out faster than she expected, especially with the medical expenses she had to make when Iris developed severe anemia due to the refusal to eat properly. The town seemed smaller than she remembered. Walking through the familiar streets, Valdate felt a mixture of nostalgia and anxiety. How would Eugene react when he saw them? Did he still care about them after so much time? The first stop was at the old house in the Lapa neighborhood where they had lived. They found a new family living there who informed them that the owner, Eugene, had sold the house a few months ago. The new resident, a friendly man named Joe, said that Eugene seemed very dejected when he came to collect the keys. He asked if you and the girl had left anything behind. "He spent a long time in the child's room just looking," Joe said. "He seemed like a man who had lost his family." Iris held her mother's hand tightly as she heard this. "Was Uncle Gene sad because we left?" "Very sad, honey," replied Joe, crouching down to the girl's height. "He used to come here sometimes, just to stand in front of the house. He said he was waiting for you to come back." Valdate felt her heart break. They took a taxi to the center of town and soon discovered that much had changed. Ron's auto repair shop had closed. He had moved to another city after his aggressive behavior cost him several clients. The Del Monte canning factory was undergoing a restructuring, and there was less movement on the streets. "Let's look for Uncle Gene at his farm," suggested Iris eagerly. But when they arrived at the office where Eugene used to work, they discovered that he had sold most of his properties. The secretary, a grey-haired lady named Mrs. Celia, recognized Valdate immediately. "My dear, how good to see you back," she exclaimed, hugging Valdate. "Mr. Caldwell was devastated when you disappeared. He's not the same man anymore." "Where is he now?" asked Valdette, fearing the answer. "Lives in a simple house near the church. After his wife left and you disappeared, he changed completely. He sold almost everything and now works with social projects for needy children." Mrs. Celia looked at Iris with affection. "Girl, your Uncle Jean talks about you every day. He has a photo of you on his desk from that day you went to the park. He never gave up believing that one day you would come back." Iris's heart soared. "Does he still like me?" "More than anything in the world, dear." Mrs. Celia gave the address of Eugene's new house, but warned, "Be prepared. He's very different. He's lost a lot of weight. He doesn't take care of his appearance like he used to. He's been through very difficult times." The walk to Eugene's house seemed eternal to Iris, who alternated between running ahead and returning to take her mother's hand, nervous about the reunion. Valdette was also anxious. She had rehearsed 1,000 times what she would say to him, but now all the words seemed inadequate. The house was small and simple, very different from the mansion where Eugene lived before. The yard had some flowers and a small vegetable garden. It was Iris who knocked on the door, her heart beating so hard that she was sure he could hear it. The door opened, and there was Eugene. Valdette was startled. He was really very thin, with grey hair that didn't exist before, and dark circles under his eyes. But when his eyes met Iris's, it was as if a light turned on inside him. "Iris," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "is it really you?" "Uncle Jean," she cried, jumping into his arms. "I'm back. I told Mom you were waiting for us." Eugene lifted her off the ground, tears streaming down his face. "My little one, how you've grown. I was so worried." For several minutes they just hugged in the middle of the doorway, both crying with happiness. Valdette watched the scene with a heavy heart, realizing how much she had underestimated the impact of her departure. "Valdette," said Eugene finally, still holding Iris in his arms. "Are you okay? Where were you?" "In Richmond, but we need to talk. There are many things I need to explain to you." Eugene invited them in. The house was modest, but cozy. Iris immediately recognized some of the books that he used to bring her, organized on a small bookshelf. "You kept my books," she exclaimed, flipping through a copy of fairy tales. "I kept everything that reminded me of you," Eugene replied, softly. "I never lost hope that one day you would come back to read them." While Iris explored the house, Valdette and Eugene sat down to talk. In a choked voice, she told about Marcia's visit, about the money offered, about her decision to leave believing it would be better for everyone. "You accepted money from her to abandon me?" asked Eugene, the pain evident in his voice. I thought I was messing up your life, your marriage. I thought it would be better for Iris to have financial independence than to depend on your charity." "Charity," he repeated incredulously. "Valdette, you weren't charity to me. You were, my family?" Valdette started to cry. "Forgive me. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Iris got sick with sadness, stopped eating, stopped playing. She asked about you every day." Eugene looked at Iris, who had found a box with drawings that she had made for him and that he had carefully kept. "And you? How did you feel away from her?" "Like a part of me had died," he admitted. "I went into depression. I needed to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. I sold everything because nothing else mattered without you here." "Uncle Jean," interrupted Iris, approaching with a drawing in her hand. "Did you get sick because I left?" Eugene pulled her into his lap again. "I was very sad, little one, but now you're here and I'm happy again." "I'm never going to leave without you again," promised Iris, hugging him tightly. "Family doesn't abandon family, right?" The phrase echoed in Eugene's heart. They were the same words he had used months before when talking to Father Michael about not giving up on looking for them. "Never again," he agreed. "But now we need to talk about the future. A lot has changed. Fillette wiped away her tears. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness after what I did, but do you still care about us? Fillette, you are the most important thing in my life, but this time let's do everything differently. No secrets, no misunderstandings. Let's be a real family with everything that means. It was then that he made a revelation that surprised both of them. I've already started the proceedings to officially adopt Iris, if you agree, of course. I want her to be legally my daughter. Iris's eyes widened. Does that mean you're going to be my real dad? If you want, little one. I want to. I always wanted to, she exclaimed, jumping off with joy. Fillette was speechless. You would do that even after everything? Fillette, love doesn't disappear because people make mistakes. You are my family, and families forgive each other. At that moment, all three knew they had a second chance. But what none of them imagined was that Marcia, who had discreetly followed their return to town, was about to appear with a revelation that would change everything once again.